Good evening. Today, Sir Keir Starmer appeared to back a new Islamophobia definition. The independent MP for Leicester South, Shocker Adam, said this in Parliament.
No religion, no theology, no philosophy is beyond critique or scrutiny, and we must protect freedom of speech at all costs. But Islamophobia is real, at least for Zainab Hussein in my city, who was run over not just once, but twice simply for being a Muslim. She survived. Not so lucky was Makram Ali, who was killed outside Finsbury Mosque simply for being Muslim. Not so lucky was Muhammad Salim, who was stabbed to death simply for being a Muslim. I would like to ask the Prime Minister that in opposition, a definition of Islamophobia was adopted. In government, it has been dropped. Can I ask what's changed?
And here is what the Prime Minister said in response.
Can I thank him for raising those examples of hatred in his constituency, and he's right to raise them, and we should all condemn them. Hatred in all its forms should be condemned by all of us in this House, and that includes anti-Muslim hatred as well, and we intend to act on it.
Well, it is interesting that Shocker Adam wants to clamp down on Islamophobia so much. Adam was previously the chair of the Leicester branch of the Muslim Engagement and Development Group, MEND it's called. He also reportedly fundraised for the group. Now, in March 2024, the then Community Secretary, Michael Gove, named MEND as an, quote, Islamist extremist organisation when outlining a new government definition of extremism. The key problem with the new Islamophobia definition is, what will it actually be? Now, the one floated at the moment seems to be by the all-party parliamentary group. Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So what does that mean in practice? Well, on this show, I recently reported on an academic report linking teachings in the Quran to the rape gang scandal that saw thousands of predominantly white working-class girls raped and abused. Would that be Islamophobic? What about reporting on why we need bollards and armed police at Christmas markets? Would that be Islamophobic? Is it Islamophobic to say that I think it's a bit rum that Muslims walk through a Christmas market in Germany shouting about Allah? What about being critical of issues like female genital mutilation, cousin marriage and forced marriage, things that are prominent in the Muslim community? What about raising questions about whether or not the Muslim community is given special treatment by the police? Now, we all remember this infamous clip.
Salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the leaders and elders that have afforded me this opportunity to speak to you.
And we remember the time that West Midlands Police met with members of the Muslim community to discuss how they wanted to be policed during the summer disorder. Would I be criticised as that for Islamophobic, would I? I mean, Shocker Adam MP rattled off a few cases where people had sadly been killed in racist attacks because they were Muslim. And that, of course, is absolutely awful, is deplorable and wrong. But we can't ignore the fact that hundreds more people have been killed or wounded by radical Islamists in Britain. And I worry that by introducing a new definition of Islamophobia, it would just make it really easy for people like me to be labelled as an Islamophobe. And if I'm an Islamophobe, then that puts my life at risk, doesn't it? Why? Because of radical Islam. But would I even be allowed to say that anymore? Or would that be Islamophobic too? There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 73% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 73% off ExpressVPN plus 4 extra months free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN. Let's get towards my panel. We've got the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've also got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. OK, so, Mark, your views on whether or not we need this Islamophobia definition and whether Starmer will cave in?
He'll probably cave in, I fear, but we don't need it. My understanding of a phobia is that it's an irrational hatred or fear of something. An arachnophobe is irrationally scared of spiders, for example. So you're an arachnophobe, even if you're not yet labelled an Islamophobe.
Well,
yeah, if there is, but then one of the questions is, when is it rational to be scared of something, right? I mean, is it OK to call out Islamic fundamentalism and to be scared of it, or does that make it a phobia? It seems to me that's a rational position to take. And in the cases of these people were killed, murdered, assaulted for being Muslims, as you rightly said, Patrick, that is absolutely horrific. But the law prohibits that. I'm presuming the assailants and the murderers have been caught, punished appropriately. A law about Islamophobia doesn't add anything to that. It is illegal to kill people for being Muslims in this country, rightly so, and as far as I'm aware, we punish that activity. So Islamophobia, if we brought that in any form of law, would be bringing in thought crimes, not actual crimes. Keir Starmer should resist that, but I suspect he'll cave.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, your views on this. I mean, the way I look at it is that I genuinely am of the personal view that this is an attempt to silence people who have got really valid criticisms about certain aspects of the Muslim community in Britain.
Yeah, look, no religion should be prioritised, full stop. I criticise the Church of England. Yep. Some of the things I've said about the bishops and the church...
Blasphemy,
does that make me a Christianophobe? No, it doesn't, because I'm allowed to have those views. The only thing with Islamophobia is that this label is to shut people like me and you maybe talking about the 7/7 bombers or the Manchester Arena bombers. Now, those horrible terrorists used religion as a cloak to kill people. Now, the majority of Muslims condemn that. So it's not that religion. But if a law like this come in, we wouldn't probably be able to discuss their religion at all. And that prioritises one religion over another. So no religion should have any effect on my life, whether that be Christianity, Islam, or any other religion. We just have to have an even playing field throughout.
Yeah, I mean, last week, I think it was, or it might have actually been Monday, we played a clip of an imam at a mosque which was saying just ludicrous stuff, that if you listen to music, that will lead you going to nightclubs, and then if you go to nightclubs, you will sleep with so many women that you eventually turn gay, and then you'll dye your hair the colour of the rainbow. Now, I think that is comical. So I will take the mick out of him. However, under a new Islamophobia definition, I could, I imagine, be classed as an Islamophobe for saying, I think that guy's a complete Fruit Loop.
There's a difference between Islamic fundamentalism and Islamic terrorists and the religion of Islam. I personally think that religion is the heart of almost every problem in this world and has been for centuries. I was brought up as a child as a Catholic, and then when I was a teenager, I turned my back on it. So I don't, agree with religion. But what's the, you can define Islamophobia because hatred is not the right. Hatred is wrong. You can criticise. I think you can criticise without being taken up as an Islamophobe. You can be anti-Semitic, surely, or deemed as anti-Semitic, and that quite rightly should be called out. If you're anti-Islamophobic, anti-Islamist, then that is the same thing, and that should be called out.
One of the issues,
I don't see the problem.
One of the issues, Mark, could be, and it's a very relevant point, we did it quite recently on this channel. I'm very proud that GB News actually did stand up for this. There was a report that came out, it was an academic report, that linked aspects of Islamic teachings with the way that the grooming gang scandal, the rape gang scandal had unfolded.
Yeah.
Things like male dominance over women, things like, dominance over non-believers, all of that stuff, right? Now, if we wanted to have a conversation about that, that fundamentally really is a conversation about whether or not aspects or people who have certain beliefs about Islam are compatible with aspects of Western culture. And I'm not sure that an Islamophobia definition would let us do that.
Correct. And the important thing here is not, Patrick, whether your coverage of that report was correct or whether the report was correct. The question is it a legitimate line of inquiry? That's the question, right? So as Nina says, it should be called out if it isn't. Yes, but that's just done in the public square. There's not a criminal offence about it. If you get something wrong that you report on GB News, you give the wrong numbers, you should be called out for it, as Nina says. But it's not a criminal offence. It's an error. And what's being suggested here is that these lines of inquiry, rather than being called out by those that don't like the consequences, should lead to you being prosecuted if they don't like the consequences. That's the really chilling effect.
But do anti-Semitic people who...
It's not illegal to be an anti-Semite. But
if
it's not illegal.
But if you espouse if you criticise...
the Jewish religion, that's fine.
The Jewish religion, can you do that without being...
Yes. And there's no blasphemy law to protect Christianity. There used to be. I think it was Channel 4, who I rarely praise, who were the first TV station to have the guts to broadcast Monty Python's The Life of Brian. Prior to that, it was considered blasphemous. Thankfully, we got rid of blasphemy laws.
Exactly.
Let's not bring them back.
But Keir Starmer has said that they're not going to.
Well, he was equivocal, wasn't he?
No.
He was equivocal.
Just on this, I think there might be a lot of people watching and listening to this whose views I would like to represent now, which is whether or not we actually need one anyway. Because there's some pretty crystal clear examples, I would argue, of some members of the Muslim faith actually being given quite specialist treatment. We knew that there was one of the police inquiries into one of the historic rape gangs. They said that they didn't want to get involved too much in it initially because they were afraid of being called Islamophobic. We've seen situations where there was an autistic lad who scuffed a copy of the Quran at school. His mum went and had to present herself at a mosque, surrounded by a police officer, actually, to go there and basically apologise to the elders. I've just played you at least one clip there of a police officer appearing, I would argue anyway, to give preferential treatment to the Muslim community. So what more do we need to do?
We don't need to do any more. As I said in my first bit, no religion should take any priority over another. What I've got written down here, if someone went and stood outside a church and started shouting obscenities about Christ, the church, Christianity, I don't believe the police would come along, arrest them and charge them. Now, if someone was outside a mosque and they were shouting obscenities about Islam or Muhammad or something like that, I believe the police would be there in seconds, and I believe that person would be charged with a hate crime. So already there is a two-tiered dealing with how this country reacts to religious rhetoric.
All right.
There is a danger that there would be a more extreme response to somebody calling out or decrying the Muslim faith or destroying the Quran, because that is part of the religion. That is a very strong part. So therefore, the police would be right in assuming that something might happen.
Yeah, but that's covered by public order offences.
Well, that's public...
You do not need a new law about Islamophobia.
I agree. We don't need...
To Adam's point, if you were screaming either outside a church or a mosque, the police would have to make a judgment about public order. They do not need any other rules.
So which one would they deal with harsher?
Well,
you tell me.
You might be right that in
harshly.
practice they're already too biased on one direction. My point is, the last thing you need is another law.
No, we don't.
We've got public order laws, and they should just be enforced equally.
I think we're all in agreement. We don't need another law. But
the Prime Minister
you have to understand why the police might be more careful and quicker to respond in this situation because they're more inflammable situation.
I mean, for me, there is an irony here, which obviously has not been lost, and I don't think will have been lost on a lot of our viewers and listeners, which is if you suddenly make it easier for people to be called an Islamophobe, then you are actually putting a target on their back.
Correct.
Because there is an incredibly radical wing of the religion of Islam, which everyone knows, which basically sees anyone who's an Islamophobe as fair game for incredibly violent actions. So, you know, by doing it, I'm sorry, but I think, you know, are we able to even call that out now? I mean, this is the thing.
But if we could just ignore religion, I'm very much of the John and Yoko, you know, imagine a world, you know, and no religion too.
Well, it's funny because they got in trouble at the Your Party conference for being played out by Imagine by John Lennon.
Yeah.
And because the Your Party has decided to try to, if you'll excuse the pun, have this quite unholy alliance between large swathes of the trans community and aspects of the Muslim community, because that song imagines a world with no God.
Yeah.
There was some Islamic news outlets
There you
that
go.
criticised that.
And to Nina's point, I rather respect that approach, that ignoring religion is a legitimate and possibly sensible thing to do. But in a free society, it's also OK to mock it, ridicule it and criticise it, not merely ignore it. And that's the freedom that needs to be protected.
Well, absolutely.
Just before we move on, I mean, I would say I'm firmly of the view that we are, so you might disagree with this, fair enough, I'm firmly of the view that we are actually still a Christian country with Christian heritage, and it is worth trying to cling on to that for as long as possible. But Mr Adam, who is the MP that we mentioned there, he gave that speech in Parliament earlier on, he left the Muslim Engagement and Development Group in March 2024 and said, MEND is an organisation which encourages Muslims to participate in Britain's liberal democracy, the exact opposite of what Michael Gove's accusations were. So there we go.